Welcome to round number 8 of the World Chess Championship, and let me just tell you, the games are heating up. This was a fun one. You're going to enjoy this. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything, so let's just jump right in. The players are tied at 3.5 to 3.5 going into this round. Ding is playing with the white pieces, and he plays an English opening, c4. Gukesh plays e5, very typical reply. Knight to c3, and here we have a rare move, bishop to b4. Now, this is actually a move that I have played myself against the English. I like to play this way. It's very unique, and immediately, sometimes you actually just trade that bishop for that knight. Now, if white doesn't want to let you do that, they play knight to d5, which is what Ding plays, and attack the bishop. There's a couple of lines here, and apparently this is actually a move that I had never seen before because I don't really study openings that much. Bishop to e7. Now, what I usually play is bishop to a5. I don't know if it's a particularly good line, but it looks like I'm giving up my bishop to this Noah's Ark trap, but in reality, I play c6, trade these pieces, and then there's some weak pawns that I can target. I have a lot of fun with it in Blitz, but like I said, I don't know how good it actually is. But in the game, Gukesh plays bishop e7, which apparently has been played a few times before. Knight to f3, d6 defends the pawn. g3, c6 is either forcing the knight to trade for the bishop or to retreat. And Ding decides to trade, and now Gukesh goes for the setup where he puts all his pawns on dark squares. This is a pretty nice strategy you can use in a lot of situations where you give up the bishop of a certain color, and then you put your pawns on that color. It makes the other bishop very effective because you can just kind of zigzag through the pawns, and then you also get control over a lot of the dark squares that your bishop can no longer control. So a nice little setup here from Gukesh. Ding castles, bishop to e6, attacks the pawn on c4. Ding plays b3 to defend it, and Gukesh immediately strikes at the center with d5. Now, you will notice we are on move 9, and Gukesh has not even used a minute and a half of his time. He is basically blitzing out every single move. What this means is he has studied this, he has prepared this, and Ding is the one who is surprised, right? He's been thinking, he's already down, 30 minutes. And so opening preparation, well done by Gukesh in this game. Totally surprised Ding, I would say. Bishop to a3 is played. We get castles. And by the way, you'll notice that when Ding plays bishop a3, he leaves the c4 pawn undefended. I mean, it's defended once, but it's attacked twice. And the question you might have is, why didn't Gukesh take the pawn? Watch this. If you take here, he's going to play d4, start to bust open the center. He's threatening to take here, so black probably has to take. But then the knight jumps in, and after like a natural move, let's just say black decides to get the king out of the center. Watch this. Queen to b1. And it looks like, wait a second, my knight is undefended. Why would I go there? Well, first of all, it's not really undefended. It's just a trade. I'm hitting the rook. My queen is going to invade on b7 if you take my knight. So let's say black says, okay, I won't take that. I'll just try to defend. Maybe I'll go queen c7, try to just defend my pawn. Look at this move. Queen to b4. Hits the bishop, which is undefended. Hits the knight, which is now only defended once, and it's attacked twice. And white's actually just winning. Let's say you save the bishop, the queen jumps in, and this is just a really great position for white, okay? And black's in trouble. So all that to say, it wasn't actually a free pawn. This is what we call a poisoned pawn in chess, where it looks like you could take it, but you really don't want to. And so Gukesh wisely avoids that and simply castles. Now the rook comes over it, which does defend the pawn. a5, knight to e1. Now sometimes when you want to use your f-pawn to put pressure on the center, you have to move the knight out of the way. And there's different ways you can do it. Knight h4 would have been another idea, but on h4, maybe you get chased around by g5. I don't know if black would have actually played that move, but it's a little bit more vulnerable. When you go to e1, it's tucked away. Nothing can really get to your knight. And now you can play f4 and attack the center. So rook to e8, f4. We get a trade. The rook comes up. We get another trade. And then knight to g6 attacks the rook, and the rook goes to e4. Now, this is one of the weirdest positions that I've seen in a while for a couple of reasons. Number one, here we are on move 16, and the rook has gone to the center of the board, which is pretty rare. Usually rooks are endgame pieces. They kind of just sit back, and they don't come to the center of the board for a while. The fact that it's here already is one thing. The other thing, the e-pawn and the d-pawn have not moved for white on move 16. can't tell you the last time I saw a game where these two center pawns haven't moved on move 16. Like, that's weird, right? That is very strange. So this is a funky position already that we have. That being said, it's relatively equal. Knight a6, knight c2, queen c7, knight goes to d4, attacks the bishop retreats, d3, and right here, no, not right, yeah, right here. Right here, Gukesh had the option, okay, to just simply play a very natural looking move like bishop to g6, attacks the rook has to move, let's say rook f4, bring this other rook over to the center, you've got both your rooks in the center. This was a great position for Gukesh that he could have done this, right? Instead, he decides to go with the move knight to d7. You'll see the question mark there. It looked kind of like, what's he doing? He's going on the defensive. He had this nice knight in the center. You can start putting pressure on White's position, and he drops back. He was actually setting a trap, and Ding fell right into it. He fell right into the trap. He traded the rooks, and he played the move rook to b1. Now, at first glance, rook to b1 seems like it makes sense. This is a half-open file. You want to put pressure on the half-open file, control the squares. You're stopping the knight from jumping in. What's wrong with that, right? The problem is when your rook was on c1, you were actually stopping the move b5. Let's just say, for example, he played a different move like bishop b2. If black tries to play b5, you're going to just take it. You've got this prevented, okay? As soon as you play rook to b1, you no longer have a pin here, which means black can play b5. Now, some of you are thinking, wait a second, Nelson, there's two attackers, there's only one defender. That doesn't make sense. He just loses the pawn, right? Wrong, because when you take, there's an in-between move. It's a check. You move your king, and then black can recapture. And why is this so good for black? Because these pawns now are going to be very dangerous. If you play b4, you shut out the bishop. The bishop has to go back. Also, you might end up losing this pawn. This is very, very good for black, okay? And so Ding made a mistake. He shouldn't have played rook b1 right here. He should have played, let's see, yeah, bishop b2, queen d2 are better moves. He fell right for the trap. Okay, so Gukesh is in the driver's seat at this point. b5 is played. He does trade, queen b6, king f1, gets the pawn. Now, at this point, Ding has a tough decision. Do you try to hold on to your pawn by playing a move like queen d2 or queen c2? Do you try to go on the offensive and create some counterplay with a different move, like maybe bishop h3 to attack something? He decides to go bishop to b2. Now, it gets a question mark from the computer, but actually it was not a bad try. And his point was that after Gukesh captured, he was going to go bishop to d4, attacking the queen and starting to get more piece activity. Now, if you try to move your queen away, let's just take a look. This square does not look very good because now you're in line with the bishop. You have to watch out for things like knight h4, and all of a sudden, White's bishops are looking pretty powerful, right? If you go to, let's say, b8, trying to keep this here, rook a1 is another idea, and he's going to get one of the pawns back, and now it's not so dangerous, only, if there's only one pawn instead of two, right? So what black needs to do is actually block with one of the knights. Okay, you have to block the attack with one of your knights. And Gukesh actually makes the wrong decision. Okay, I think he thinks for a little while here, probably not as long as he should have. And he plays the wrong knight. Now, the main idea, I believe, it has to do with the fact that after you move this knight, you're putting yourself into a pin. The knight on d7 can easily be attacked by this bishop. And that could potentially cause you some serious problems, right? Because if that knight is attacked, it's not really defended by this knight because it's the pin. It's just an awkward situation. If you would have blocked with the other knight, there is no more bishop h3 to attack anything. And also, this knight is closer to these pawns to help push them down the board, which is probably what you're going to want to do to win the game because these pawns are very dangerous. So that's what he needed to play. He had time. He probably should have slowed down a little bit. Maybe he was thinking about keeping the pressure up on Ding because Ding only has 15 minutes. This is move number 26, so they still have, about 15 moves to play, but he chooses the wrong knight. Okay? So, now that being said, it's still a better position for Gukesh, and Ding has to still be very, very careful. Rook to c1, excuse me. Rook to c1 attacks the pinned knight, and he goes bishop to b3. I don't quite understand this move. I think the engine wanted the bishop to go either to d5 or even just push the pawn right away. There was an interesting line here that I want to show. b4, if you play queen c2, just attacking the knight and attacking the bishop, black could have actually played b3, giving you the option to take the piece here. For example, takes, 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 takes. You win a piece, great, right? Wrong, because b2 and... Oh, actually, no, white has knight to d2. This is not the line that I was looking at. Wait a second. There is a line here. Knight takes c5, queen takes c5. Ah, it's b2 right here. Sorry about that. It's b2 before you trade the queens. Because now, if you take the free queen, you actually lose your rook and black gets the queen back. So you can't do that. The rook is under attack. And how do you deal with this? You can't really stop this. The best move apparently is, yeah, you have to take the queen, but then you just go into this position. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you guys. b3 would have been a nice move in this position. So I don't know why Gukesh didn't play that. Maybe he missed that that nice move b2 there. I'm not totally sure. But instead, he goes for bishop b3. We get queen to e1. Really nice move here, because when you go to queen to e1, you're attacking on a5, but you're also sneaking over to f2 to increase the pressure on that c5 knight. Bishop goes back, the queen goes to f2. Here we go, we have the attack on the knight. So Gukesh defends with the rook. Now, bishop to e3, rook to c7. Yeah, this is the moment of the game. I apologize, guys, I'm losing my voice. Hopefully it comes back here in just a second. So rook to c7. This is an interesting position where Ding had an opportunity to play a really powerful move that is very counterintuitive. The move was knight to e1. And the point is, you're unleashing your bishop. You're taking away the option for this knight to move to e4, which is a potentially very annoying move. So for example, if you were to try to play d4 right now to start pushing and maybe go here and create some tactics, it doesn't work because the knight's going to jump to e4. You've got this, your queen is under attack, you have to move, and black is doing just fine. They could play something like bishop d5 and everything is great. When you play knight to e1, you now have control over this square. So knight to e4 is no longer an option for black, and black has to be extremely careful. There's, as an example, a4, you can now play d4. Your knight apparently still has to go to e4, but then you do this, and it's just good for white. I mean, it's losing a piece, I guess. I don't know why the knight had to go to e4. Honestly, I don't understand this position entirely. Let's just see what happens. If you go knight b3, what's the deal? d5, hits the queen, hits the bishop, hits the rook. This is total chaos, guys. I'm not going to even pretend like I understand what's going on. So anyway, the point was, knight to e1 was a really nice move. If you could have found it, Ding probably would have won the game. That being said, he chooses knight to d4, which is also a good move and much more human. You're attacking the bishop. You're bringing the knight to the center of the board. That makes a lot of sense. Also, after the bishop moves, knight to c6. Now, what is he doing? Well, he's blocking off the rook from defending the knight on c5. Remember, this is where he has all these pieces attacking, and the rook is part of the defense of that. So he's saying, nope, not anymore. I'm threatening to just take your knight. The problem with this move is that you can sack your rook for a knight and a bishop, which generally speaking is a really good trade for the person who gets the knight and the bishop. But in this particular case, that's not where the story ends, because by trading off that rook, now Ding is able to take the knight. Okay, so he actually doesn't lose material with that exchange. But when the dust settles, he still has these two pawns that he has to worry about, which is why this position is so interesting. Yes, Ding is up the exchange, but these pawns, I mean, these are very dangerous. Not to mention you have the bishop perfectly placed to help support these pawns as they push down the board. This is anyone's game. I mean, this could be a draw. This could be a win for Ding if he's able to figure out how to stop the pawns and maybe capture them, and he wins because of the rook. Or it could be a win for Gukesh if he's able to figure out how to push the pawns in the right manner and create some tactical opportunities. So really, really interesting position. h6, he's giving his king some places to go to. You don't need to rush. These pawns are not going anywhere. You still have time. Time control. It's move 34. So they have 6 more moves that they need to make. They both are a bit low on time. And actually, from a few moves ago, when Gukesh had surprised Ding out of the opening, had gotten into that great position, Ding was in trouble, Ding was down on the clock, the script has switched now, and it's actually Gukesh is lower on time and in the worst position. So can he hold on is really the big question. King to e1, b4 is played. He pushes the pawn. King, king doesn't go to d2 yet. Queen goes to d4. Knight jumps to e5. Now the king goes to d2. So basically, Ding has saying, look, I want my king to be here. It's shielded by the pawn, so I have a little bit of shelter. But I'm also close enough to these guys that if I need to help stop them from becoming queens, my king is there. Especially if any pieces end up getting traded, you want your king to be close to the passed pawn so you can try to stop them, right? So he's putting his king on a nice square. From Gukesh's standpoint, his king is very safe, right? He's got these pawns over here. He can just tuck his king somewhere here if he needs to. The bishop is helping defend. His king is totally fine. It's a question of what's happening with these pawns and can he generate counterplay on Ding's king. Queen to g2 is attacking here. Maybe he'll take these if he's given the opportunity. He's also threatening some tactics. Do you guys see the threat here? The immediate threat from Gukesh? Well, hopefully you noticed. It's knight to f3. This is a fork. And the pawn is actually pinned. So if you just play a random move, you're going to lose the game immediately to knight f3. You lose your queen. So because of that, Ding says, all right, I better just go back here. Defends, offers the queen trade, stops any knight f3 checks because you just take it. Gukesh goes back. Ding goes back. Gukesh goes back. And it really looks like we're headed to a draw here, okay? Because players are repeating. They're approaching move 40. Queen to f2, queen to d5, queen to d4, and at this moment in the game, it's up to Gukesh to decide. Do you want to draw? If so, you just go back to g2, queen g2. If not, you have to play a different move. And basically everyone was saying he's going to take the draw. It's the only thing to do. And yes, it's tough because you had a winning position, but hey, at least then you were losing. Now you're going to draw. Like it's fine, right? He's gonna take the draw. He thinks, and he plays queen to a2. Now, the engine doesn't like it, but practically speaking, he's not like, it's not a blunder. Like the X on there makes you think, oh my goodness, what is he doing? He's throwing the game away. It's not really a blunder. It's just the engine says, no, the best thing to do was take the draw. Queen a2 is like, no, I want to play on. I want to try to win. I want to at least put the pressure on. I've got my two pawns. This is worth a shot, right? And if you have to remember, he doesn't have the eval bar like we do. He doesn't know, like, oh yeah, it's just a draw. Okay, this is the best move. This is not the best for me. Like, he doesn't know. They have to come to the conclusion, like, who's winning? Who's losing? Who has the advantage here, right? And he decides, like, it's worth playing on and it's worth fighting. And a big part of this is the rook is not going to be super active. And we're going to see this as the game goes on, what happens. So he goes with the check. Rook to c2. He goes back to e6. And there's the check from Ding. He's going to try to pick up the pawn, which he's able to do. And certainly Gukesh saw this. But now the move b3. And this pawn is not going to be able to be captured by white anytime soon because of the bishop. This bishop's on the wrong color. Unless you're going to, go here and sacrifice your rook at some point, you're never going to be able to take this pawn. Which means your pieces are going to be tied up guarding it from becoming a queen. So that is why Gukesh probably felt like, okay, I'm not risking so much by going for this line because this pawn is just going to be a constant threat, okay? So rook to c1. Now, why did he go rook to c1 instead of rook to b2? Well, you got to blockade the pawn at some point. And I think the idea is if black ever plays b2, now you blockade it. It's on a more vulnerable square because the bishop can no longer control it. And if he doesn't push the pawn, well, your rook is a bit more active. You have more options than if your rook is just stuck here sitting on b2 where you can't really move. Okay, so nice. I think that's a pretty nice idea, rook c1. Queen to d5 starts to really put the pressure on the king for a couple of reasons. Number one, you might sneak in here and start gobbling up the pawns. Number two, you're creating a pin to where this knight can now jump here, potentially in some cases. You have to watch out. There's some interesting lines where you bring the bishop, you sacrifice your knight. Actually, I'll show you this. Let's just say white plays a random move. You go here, and they play another random move. Knight to c4, or even just b2 first, and then something like knight to c4. You're taking advantage of it. Well, it's pinned. But actually, yeah, I can't. Let me... well, okay, yeah, if you let too many moves happen, it's just going to be bad news for white. But the line I was trying to show you was something to do with this. where you can sack your queen and play b2. This is one of the lines that they were talking about. There's better ways for black to do it if white just wastes 2 moves. But anyway, the point is, sorry to get sidetracked. The point is, this is a very nice square for the queen. Puts a lot of pressure on the white position in a lot of different ways. And white has to be careful. He goes queen to b4. He's getting away from this. He's keeping the bishop defended. He's also controlling this square. He's also keeping an eye on the pawn. So all the things that we talked about, he's guarding against those. We get queen to g2. And yes, it's a nice try. You're hunting down the pawns. But there's one problem. Not really a problem. It's just, it is what it is. Queen to e4 is a fork. And it forces a queen trade. Okay, if you're black, you obviously have to trade queens. You can't do anything else or you just lose your queen. And so Ding goes for it. We get a trade, and it leads to a forcing line, which leads to a draw. I invite you guys to pause the video right here if you haven't seen this already. It's black to play, and there's a forcing line that leads to a draw. See if you can find it. All right, if you had a chance to look at that, this one wasn't super difficult, but maybe a little bit of a challenge for some viewers. So the move was b2, and you're attacking the rook. Okay, so the rook's got to stop you. Let's say rook to b1. I guess the rook could have gone somewhere else. It doesn't really matter. Bishop to a2 attacks the rook. You got to take the pawn. Knight to c4 check. Forks these pieces. You move. Gets the trade. And this, they agree to a draw. Why? Because as soon as you take here, you have an opposite color bishop ending. And you're going to just set up a blockade. There's no way that white's going to be able to push their pawns forward. The bishops can never oppose each other because they're on opposite squares, and it's just a super easy and basic draw. And so they actually just agreed to a draw even before the capture. So that's the game. Really exciting game. I enjoyed watching it. I was on the edge of my seat, like back and forth. Who's going to win? What's going to happen? And we're tied. 4-4 going into the 9th round. So, yeah. I don't actually know. I think this is another psychological victory for Ding because he was losing big time, and then to come back. What do you guys think? See you in the next round. Stay sharp. Play smart. Take care.